What's up guys, my name is Carl and welcome back to Tech Hunter. So today I've got my hat on again, my hair still looks a little bit wafty so I'm going to keep that covered up for now. And more importantly, we've got a monitor in for review. It's the BenQ EX2780Q. And this thing is packing a hell of a lot of features. We've got 1440p, 144Hz, IPS display with even 10-bit color and also FREESYNC included. Also it's got a few other little quirks which we'll get into later in the video. A few years ago you'd be paying around the £800 mark for a display with these kind of specs. So it's nice to see that these prices are slowly coming down, and it's probably due to the fact that you can see a lot more kind of mid-range cards like an RTX 2060 Super or an RX 5700 XT being able to drive this kind of display at this kind of refresh rate. A few years ago you'd be needing your upper tier 1080 Ti to hit that kind of performance, whereas now we're getting that kind of similar performance for around the £350 to £400 mark. So it's good to see with as far as graphics cards are concerned, even though they're still more expensive than we'd all like. But more importantly, let's get back to the main topic at hand, and that is this BenQ gaming monitor. Perfect for gaming. Let's see about that.
First things first, let's address the main point. This display is £450 in the UK and $450 in the US, which poises it dangerously close to the holy grail of 1440p 144Hz gaming monitors, the LG 27GL850-B. A monitor I'm yet to get my hands on personally, but it is renowned as the kind of ultimate gaming monitor in this category because LG have managed to get something that nobody else has managed to achieve, and that is the lowest response times we've ever seen from an IPS panel, as well as proving to be an outstanding package generally all around for just £500-ish. So for £50 or dollars, what are you gaining? What are you losing? Let's take a look at what the EX2780Q actually has to really offer you. Starting off with the most obvious stuff, the physical side of the display. It's quite sleek, it's smart looking, it will blend in perfectly in any office at work and give off no impressions of its kind of gaming ability. Something I personally quite like. I like my displays to be underrated and as minimalist as possible. Tiny bezels around the left and right hand side, as well as the top of the display. And then, as you can see, we've got a thicker one at the bottom, which features a huge glossy black chunk of plastic, which I can only assume has some form of ambient light sensor built in, and an IR for the remote, because if you cover it up, the remote stops working. Love it or loathe it, the display comes sporting some kind of weird grey copper coloured accents. I wouldn't go as far as to say they're golden, mind you, definitely kind of bronzy, coppery colour. But the stand is coated in this colour, as well as the kind of chin has a slight hint of it as well if you catch it in the right light. Speaking of the stand, it's about as basic as it gets. No height adjustment, no pivoting, no twisting, just the ability to tilt up and down, and that is tilting down by 5 degrees and up by 20 degrees. The stand does have a nice little neat square cutout, which is a nice place to keep the included remote. More on this bad boy later. There's also an easy to remove cover on the rear for a nice neat way to route your cables through the stand. If you do decide to populate all of the I/O, including the 3-pin power adapter, 2 HDMI 2.0 ports, a DisplayPort 1.4 and a USB Type-C port, then you may have a difficult time trying to get them all inside the little channel, but I can imagine most people will probably either use 1 or 2 of those, and the power. The display is also VESA compatible, so you can always just mount your own arm or stand if you wanted to, if you're not happy with this one that's included, and you feel like this weird doorstop looking wedge thing that BenQ included is better off holding your door open, which to me it looks like that's what it's made for. It's better at doing that than maybe lifting your monitor up by a few millimeters, maybe getting the degree a little bit better, maybe another couple of degrees in that tilt angle. Then you go ahead and you do you and make use of this thing. On the front of the display, we have the bottom chin, which is home to two 2-watt speakers, and on the rear we have a 5-watt subwoofer to act as a kind of decent set of included speakers. I'll be honest, they're not incredible, but they do a decent job and give you an option of resting your ears from your earphones if you just want to watch some casual YouTube videos. If you do want to take advantage of these included speakers, you want to make use of the included remote that BenQ supplies. This thing. I'll be honest, this remote has been the best part of the review for me. When fiddling with monitors for reviews, you're constantly flicking through the menus, turning things off and on to try and get it right, and the remote genuinely makes things so much easier. Whether you're changing your HDR profiles or your color profiles or your brightness or your blue light filters or your black light levels, it's just so much easier to use the included remote instead of reaching around the back of the display and fiddling with the little included joystick, which is nice by the way, and the other buttons as well. Don't worry, if you do lose the remote, you can still control everything, like I said, from the back of the display, and the volume also has a little wheel just under this left-hand side. The EX2780Q is in a bit of a weird area for me. It has incredibly good color accuracy thanks to the 10-bit IPS panel, providing you can set it to the right color profiles and HDR is disabled. This thing covers 100% of the sRGB color gamut and 95% of the DCI-P3 color space, which is very good for a gaming display. But it has 5 milliseconds gray to gray response times, which makes it kind of less desirable for gamers. It's a bit of a weird fusion between a kind of professional display and a gaming display. A jack of all trades, you could say, but clearly a master of none. For £450 to £500, you can get a superb gaming display that's pretty good for color accurate work, or even get a great calibrated 1440p or possibly 4K display for the same price as this, with maybe a 60Hz refresh rate instead. That's going to be better for that kind of area of work. Moving on to the display itself, being an IPS panel, it does suffer from a little bit of IPS glow, for the hotspots being the top left and bottom left. Whilst gaming though, I didn't really notice any signs of that at all, and I didn't really notice any signs of ghosting either. And thankfully no screen tearing thanks to FREESYNC, which is available in the 40 to 144Hz range. Unfortunately, my biggest problem is with HDR, or should I say the inconsistency of the HDR, or HDRI as BenQ wants to call it. I initially used it on display HDR and found it to be a solid experience. It was nice watching YouTube videos with HDR enabled, and I feel like it added a little bit more immersion. I tried out maybe the more vibrant and possibly oversaturated options like game and cinema. The weird thing is when I enabled one of those modes, they appear to start off with the colors just kind of popping nice and bright and vibrant. And then about 20 seconds later, the image would kind of dim down and be kind of flat and dull, regardless of whether I was in a well-lit or dark environment. I then Googled this and it would appear others report the same kind of weird behavior. I thought it could have been down to maybe an ambient light sensor adjusting things, but there's absolutely no options to disable or enable that in the menu, so I'm not even sure there's one built in if I'm honest now. And the only thing I can suggest is to use display HDR mode and adjust the contrast as you see fit to suit the image, or just disable HDR in Windows and on the display and just use the display in its natural SDR IPS manner and still get great colors anyway. This has probably got to be the best HDR 400 I've seen, but it's still terrible to deal with and truly isn't worth the hassle. It's hard to tell whether it's down to Windows or BenQ, but this is the first HDR 400 display I've used that doesn't turn everything a weird pink color when enabling HDR in Windows. On the upside, it can look really good when watching HDR content like some nice nature scenes or whatever, but it's a little bit buggy when it comes to gaming. With Battlefield 5, for example, in DX11, it worked fine, but when moving over to DX12, it looked extremely overexposed and completely washed out for some reason. I don't really know why. I didn't have any issues in Far Cry New Dawn at all with inconsistencies, but it really didn't offer much to the gaming experience because it just doesn't get bright enough. What is this thing actually like to game on though? It's good. I enjoy gaming on it a lot. I tried out some Valorant and I did pretty well considering how terrible I usually am at FPS games. Is that down to this monitor specifically, or is it down to the 144Hz refresh rate? If I'm honest, it's probably the latter. Overall though, the BenQ EX2780Q is a really nice, really solid display. There's nothing truly bad about it other than the weird HDR issues. It's just not quite the kind of ultimate gaming monitor at this price, nor is it the ultimate creator's monitor at this price. If you are like me and you play games and create YouTube videos or edit photos on the display or something along that kind of line, something like this would probably be a solid purchase. But if you're looking for an extremely solid gaming display, the LG 27GL80 the Aorus AD27QD and the ViewSonic VX2780 MHD are better options at this price point, with the LG being my pick of the bunch as it also has great color accuracy even with an 8-bit panel. And if you are like me, you probably couldn't tell the difference between an 8-bit panel and a 10-bit panel unless they're sat side by side. I'd probably choose the LG panel for its better stand and also official G-Sync support too. Anyway guys, that brings us to the end of the video. If you have found this helpful, feel free to click that like button down below. And if you decide my face hasn't offended you, don't forget to click that subscribe button and turn those notifications on so you can know when my next video goes live. Thanks for watching guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.